No estás comiendo. Estás flaco. Hay que comer más.
No, gracias. Pues sí.
Es lo que creí escuchar.
I know that the difficult parts to animate were the skeletons and the Dante's tongue, but also like the Abuelita's, how do you call this? The neck, the skin.
Yeah, flag.
We actually,
So,
Oh yeah, we should
have
talk
a good
about
story about that.
oh, tell
We
me,
have
tell
a
me.
great
Yeah,
story.
Tell me.
So when I first saw the artwork for that character, I wanted to work on her because she reminded me of my wife's grandma.
Okay.
And so I actually brought her in for reference because we were building her and we didn't really have a whole lot of reference of elderly people. And so we actually brought her in and asked her if she could kind of go through a bunch of different kind of movements.
Well, it was funny
And-
because they were like Alonso, speak to her in Spanish,
yeah.
and they were like,
He was translating.
make her angry. And I was like, this is an old lady. You know, how am I gonna make Nick's grandma angry? She was like, no, we need some reference of her being angry. And then I was like, I can't do it, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, at least we have to shoot reference of like her like jiggly bits.
And she's from Mexico City, she doesn't speak English, and so I've never been able to really communicate with her one-to-one, so we brought Alonso along so that he could communicate, and one of the things that we had to ask her was to like jiggle her arms and jiggle her neck and ask her like, so poor Alonso had to ask her.
Yeah.
And she did everything?
She
Oh
did,
yeah. She was great.
She was the great
She was
sport.
great, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Pues técnicamente la papada de la abuelita sí está difícil de animar, ¿ah? O pues tarda tiempo. No, pero está suave, digamos, la abuelita tiene tanta carne excesa que te la, digamos, la haces mover y se le mueve aquí la carnita y toda la cosa. Pues, obviamente me recuerda a alguien que yo conozco, ¿no? Yo creo que lo más difícil era, digamos, humanos son difíciles, obviamente, de animar, pero yo creo que era la idea de cómo es que pudieran aparecer que son mexicanos. Yo creo que para mí y para muchos animadores era lo más difícil. Cómo es que pudieran estos personajes no parecer que son animados por americanos, ¿me entiendes?
Now that you've created like skeletons and you know how the technology works for that, for your other Pixar characters, like, did you do something like Mike Wazowski seen as a skeleton or like Woody?
During the design phase, when we were trying to figure out what these skeletons look like, we actually took our Pixar characters that we have in the past, and I did a pass where I painted them all as a skull, what their skull would actually look like, to tell us how caricatured can we get with this and still make it feel like if it was Mr. Incredible, for example, could I make a skeleton look like Mr. Incredible?
Okay.
Which is tricky because, you know, you don't have all the features.
Antes corría así, pero ahora corro así y soy más veloz.
Life sounds like.
But talking about the design of something like the buildings, what was the most difficult thing to do?
Well, we're always trying to design sets that are photogenic, besides telling the story, to try to create a stage that's beautiful and photographable from many angles. And when Lee decided on the tower structure, it was a very challenging idea, but we knew it would be very photogenic because layers are wonderful to move around, different levels you can shoot down and up, and characters can travel in between the towers, and we used all of that. So
for the Land of the Dead in this one, it all took place at night, so we don't have time of day. And then there really isn't weather in the world to speak of. It's sort of, there's a lot of fog and atmosphere, but otherwise not much else is happening, and so we don't have weather to do it. And then for color, this world is purposefully this riot of color to keep it this very exciting, wonderful world. And so then what do you do with color? We kind of lost a lot of the things we would normally use, and so it was a big challenge for Harley and I to figure out how do we solve that. And so really in the moments where we needed things to kind of calm down and be a quieter moment, maybe just a break for the audience for calm, but also when it's a more emotional scene to kind of calm things down, we would take a bunch of color away. And so maybe it would just be moonlight with a couple candles or something.
So every time I see an animated movie, I don't see characters, I see actors. I think that they're real. So talking about trying different clothes for the character to have a personality, is there something manual that you do? Like you try things on and something on you, on other people?
Oh
Or
yeah,
it's just-
yeah.
you
For
do?
example, like on Hector, we got a jacket and we ripped it up exactly how the design was, and we actually then we put it on like a skeleton, you know, like a medical skeleton,
Okay.
like
Okay,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we kind of hang it up, and
Okay.
and then yeah, and we could even try it on, and we used the real life kind of things to get a lot of the details, like. When we designed it, it was fairly simple, you know, some tattered edges, but when we actually ripped it up, we noticed that it exposed like these shoulder pads and all this, you know, all the threads, and we really were able to take a lot of, you know, really like rich details from real clothing.
I wanted to ask you about the name of the characters.
Yeah, so I mean, for the main characters, we don't, but when you need to make an entire world feel real, then there's hundreds of characters everywhere, and so we get to like make up whatever names we want for the background characters, and so for a lot of them, I just named them my family members, like Uncle Ramon or Tio Paco, or like, so I just used, yeah, and so now I can tell my family like, oh, you know, you see that character? That's your character.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Es la única noche del año en que nuestros ancestros nos visitan.
Creí que era una de esas mentiras que les dicen a los niños. Yo solo te... Pero yo...
Solo importa la familia.
Can you tell me about the other movies that you saw that you took a reference from, like John Wick?
Oh, sure. So random ones, like a lot of action films tend to have kind of amped
Yeah.
up. So like John Wick, and then Y Tu Mama Tambien, and then this crazy movie Enter the Void had crazy use of color that we were looking at, and you know, a whole bevy of films. We also looked a lot at things like Moulin Rouge or
Very
Chicago,
theatrical
the super
films.
theatrical ones, because looking at how the stage shows were sort of presented in the color in those, because we knew we were going to have some stage shows in the film, because it's Ernesto de la Cruz is this big theatrical guy, and so taking inspiration from that. And
We looked at the films from the golden age of Mexican cinema, the ones shot especially by Gabriel Figueroa, and especially for the flashbacks and the old film clips, we were inspired to try to get the big scenic exteriors that he was shooting, you know.
Lo siento. Podremos tener diferencias, pero nada es más importante que la familia. ¡Estoy feliz de ser su familia!